Hey, it's Patrick Lovell, and I am Truth Bomb riffing the con, and this is slightly different than, or at least this objective for this particular recording is slightly different than what I normally do because I want to try to connect with you directly because I don't know how else to say it, but to get to the point. And I'm trying to connect with you to raise money. And I'm trying to raise money because there is a lot of money being thrown at things that are really in control of the country we live in, in control of the world we live in, and that's pretty much destroying us all. Um, the nature of what these recordings are and what these messages are and everything that I have done and what we've been attempting to do as a group, and it's really been promising and at times invigorating and hopeful, but at times it's been very frustrating. And I think all of that is to be expected given the lay of the land and the craziness of how much information we're all contending with and how much we have to do, all of us, to just get through life on a daily basis, which I call the righteous grind. There's only so much people can do, there's only so much people can absorb, there's only so much people can get behind. And from where I'm sitting, you know, all of that is an uphill sort of battle, particularly for your attention. And what I've been laying down specifically in Twitter and then sometimes in these truth bombs is that billionaires spend billions, as do multinationals. And what I mean by multinationals and multinational corporations spend billions to basically corrupt the political process to grift trillions. Everybody knows the system is corrupt. Everybody knows it's inside pool, but nobody knows who does what, when, and how it all works because it's complicated. And those that are smart and close to the source of these things don't question it because they're playing ball with it. And those of you who are on the outside, many of you just have to fight to survive, to live another day. And you've got challenges and family and bills, and you've got things you've got to do. And so it's kind of hard to land in a space that represents everything that's important to you. But at the same time, I'm absolutely convinced that there are millions of you, probably tens of millions of you, that if you understood the information that I have been laying out there, that we've spent years and millions of dollars aggregating, that if you understood what it reveals, that we have now made for free, which is both a miracle, but also incredibly disappointing. But at the same time, I'm hopeful because we made it for free at www.thecon.tv. And this information cost approximately $4.5 million to produce in years of effort and tens of thousands of hours of extreme effort, which, from where I'm sitting so far, the powers that be have made sure, as well as just the lay of the land, that the truth has no value. And I find myself in an incredibly paradoxical, almost unbelievable sort of scenario, but that I've got to somehow break through to get to you. Because the ask is that I'm trying to get literally off the ground, and I have been for many months now. And we've approached, I don't know, 60, 70 people that have been so kind and so generous, and they have, for the most part, done exactly what I'm asking for, which is I'm asking for a $13 contribution slash investment into what I call a tidal wave populist crusade to purge corruption. Why? Well, because everything is on the line. I think that anybody who just looks around at your Twitter feed can just get examples, that just come at you fast and furious that are, for the most part, insane and ridiculous. And there's also very incredibly invigorating and smart and brilliant and other, sort of pieces of information within the grand context of the grand dialogue, which most of the time feels like high school to me. But in either case, people are battling for position in all of the different ways that it manifests, and it's quite frankly chaos, but chaos in context to some of the biggest challenges that we have faced as a country, and that aren't getting any easier. And who am I and what have I done and everything else? I'm not going to give you the whole history of the world because I've done it over and over and over. And if you want to maybe do a little time and research, if this is the first time you're checking me out, I'm a journalist, I'm a producer. I put together a piece of work called The Con at www.thecon.tv that lays out the who did what, when, and how, that reveals the largest criminal conspiracy and cover up in history that never ended, in which we found the only racketeering, uh, you know, conviction in the entire country that represented what the entire constellation of our financial system was involved with. That lo and behold, I found that nobody else is reporting on, that we were able to get to through a $4.5 million investment, a $29 trillion revelation that that was the Federal Reserve backdooring tens of trillions of dollars to a bankrupt financial system that blew it itself up based on racketeering. It was the largest criminal, conspiracy in the history of the world, the 2008 Great Financial Crisis. And as a result of that, we just perpetuated and extended the problem, and it never ended. 29 trillion wasn't the only massive infusion that was incidentally paid back by Wall Street, presumably. But if you understand how that money was moved into existence for what, and then ultimately paralleled and compartmentalized with what we call quantitative easing, under the circumstances that led to, quite frankly, free money and the United States, full faith and credit of the United States purchasing toxic assets that the fraudulent financial system created. And they didn't literally pay any criminal accountability while they destroyed tens of millions of people. And that's not an exaggeration. In fact, it's literally hundreds of millions of people, 100 million plus people around the world when you connect it to pensions and that sort of thing as well. And there was, countries as well as municipalities and everybody that got set up in this whole thing that blew up the world. I call it financial terrorism. But what people don't understand is it never ended. And what we reveal basically is over the course of the last 13 years, billionaires have been given free money. And so as a result, we've got a situation which is a massive conundrum that everybody understands, but they can't see the forest for the trees because nobody can take a step back and look at the reality and all the details that I've aggregated for a very long time, because it's not an easy process. But what I have through the $4.5 million investment that, fortunately I realized a partner that was willing to do that gave us the opportunity to go on the world and do what the $90 billion a year apparatus of the federal government, of our institutions that are tasked to make sure that everything that I had to find never happened, A, didn't, and then B, never revealed to us what happened, and it never ended. And from where I'm sitting, the fact is billionaires and multinationals spend billions to corrupt it's the lowest, quite frankly, ROI in all of their portfolio, return on investment, but to corrupt the political process to be able to grift trillions of dollars from this monetary policy that bleeds itself into fiscal policy as well. And there's so much more to it. But nobody is going to tell you the information that I have. Not mainstream media. They buried it completely, all of them. Fox, of course, and I bring this up all the time, settled for, being involved with creating a platform of lies during the insurrection that the CEO, Rupert Murdoch, just copped to and paid $787 million to Dominion for lying. That's the business model. And they're not the only ones. And the other options are, political candidates that are not going anywhere near the information that I have. And I'm very close to several of them, quite frankly. But I'm not sure it's because they don't want to, rewire their brains to understand all of the information that I'm getting to them, even though it's not rocket science, it's racketeering. But it also feels like there's one place that everyone who's talking about corruption can't go to. And they can speak about platitudes, but they don't want to speak about details, probably because they're afraid they'll get sued. Because yes, we all have freedom of speech, but no, you don't have the ability to make statements that can come back to you and blow up in your face based on libel. which is why you need to believe what it is that I'm telling you, because we now just made the con available at www.thecon.tv for free, which I consider, at once a blessing, it's a miracle, and I'm so grateful, but at the same time, I'm so disappointed because it's one of these things. And I was told by an agent, an industry insider last week, his reaction to it, and he votes on the board of the Academy. And he said, why doesn't everybody in the country know about this? And it should have won an Academy Award. And that's my sentiments exactly. And I believe many of you will have the same experience, but the information that we provide is monumental. And we are the only ones that have it. And it's the thing that enables you to understand how the financial system has completely hijacked our government and what they got away with, and how the full faith and credit of the United States is used to backstop what is an enormous deception and betrayal. And unfortunately, our legal system is in on it because everybody's getting paid. I'm last man standing. I have got the $29 trillion truth that led to the $70 trillion truth that we spent $4.5 million. And so I'm literally asking you to invest in a movement to purge corruption based on the information that we have, that's going to lead to a podcast that we're doing, that I can do professionally, that I can do by the book as a 501c3 or C4, where it's a nonprofit, and then that we can get the word out more and more and more. That's going to lead to, I hope, because I've got hundreds of hours on the shelf that I was waiting to build season 2 of the con, but I couldn't get it out there because we got quashed by the system that cannot allow this information to get out there. And so my idea is that I want to create a Lollapalooza-like national revival tour where we present the truth to the American people, and we've got to get millions of people involved. So your options are, honestly, if you're investing in a specific presidential candidate, or maybe a PAC, or somebody in the in the political realm, or somebody that appeals to you, let me just make this case. Nobody's got these answers, and they're not going to tell you. So, for example, Bernie Sanders, who once famously quipped when he was running for the presidency in 2016 and probably would have won had it not been for the betrayal of the DNC and everything that took place that ultimately gave us Donald Trump, he said in front of a national audience in a Brooklyn debate on stage with Hillary Rodham Clinton, he said Wall Street's business model is fraud. And he knew it. And I know he knew it because my mentor, who taught me everything that we set forth and put forth in our work, ultimately was his advisor. But Bernie didn't want to get past phase 1. Who knows what the political reasons for that were, but Bernie at that time raised 40, 60 million, something like that, for a presidential campaign that went nowhere. And Bernie never tackled corruption. Elizabeth Warren right now is on the stump. She's talking about, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and here's some problems that we got to look at. But she's been she's been telling us certain things about corruption for the past 13 years, and she's never been able to derail this Goliath giant of cancerous corruption in our midst, nor will she. And by the way, her background was she was a corporate attorney, winds up in the Ivy League as a professor, and she knows, where bread is buttered, as does anybody who's smart. And she's like going to give us enough information, but she's not going to be a threat to the system. She hasn't. So, those guys aren't going to be able to solve the problem. Let's look at our presidential candidates. So far, President Biden, from what I understand, I just did a quick search right before we recorded this, but I think the Democratic DNC has announced that they've raised about $70 million for the Biden campaign. It's probably a pretty heavy amount of money that they've done in short order, but where's it coming from? Most likely to protect the system that I'm revealing. Donald Trump, he has announced, I think, his campaign. I think they've raised something along the lines of $35 million in the second quarter. Who's Donald Trump? I mean, I could go on and on and on about all of the things that Donald Trump is under investigation for, has been indicted for, that relates to what it is that I'm revealing to you. In fact, all of it on a very, very tiny scale in comparison to what I'm revealing to you. But that guy has got $35 million and millions upon millions of people that are following him like it's the Jonestown, cult. And we know where that led to for those of us who were alive at that time. And, let's put in there, Waco and whatever else. I mean, this sort of group of people have been around for a long time and they're just metastasizing, and it's not going to get any easier to battle this. But my go-to line is corruption births and fuels fascism. And I know how to tackle both at the same time. And I've got a network of people that are the professionals behind the scenes that if we could get millions of people to the fore to create critical mass, we know exactly who to put into power to be able to frickin' recalibrate everything and hold the guilty accountable. And what we're talking about, again, going back to the most prescient point, the work that we did led to the revelations that the Federal Reserve backdoored $30 trillion to a bankrupt financial system that got there that way based on racketeering, where their assets were worth zero. So if you understand anything about lending, they were insolvent. So none of what happened could have happened by the statutes, by the book. They just made accommodations because we were in desperate straits and nobody wanted to wait. And everybody at the time period thought that the world was going to end if they actually did the right thing. And there was a lot of ways the right thing could have happened, from nationalizing the banks to doing massive investigations to massive trials, and then take out the bad guys and reboot the system. But instead, we gave trillions upon trillions of dollars to the bad guys that then, of course, do the working for the billionaires already, and they made them monumentally richer because that's how it works. You give money to the guys that you know you're going to get paid back, and then you grow it that way because it's a sure thing, especially through assets and stocks and all of the other manipulation that comes with it that are tied to what it is we're saying. I could go on and on, but it's not rocket science, it's racketeering, and we have to galvanize millions of people. And I know that there's so many of you out there that are busy, that you have things to do, that you've got maybe one job, two jobs, a family to take care of. It's really hard for you to wrap your head around this. But I'm also asking you to understand that I've had people invest in this that have really inspired me to no end. We've had people, for example, that I'll never forget getting an email message from a group of Mexican families in Southern California that caught wind of the con, watched the con, caught wind of this effort because they got caught into having their lives completely demolished by having their houses ripped from them based on illegal foreclosures that are all part and parcel to the revelations and the information that I have that I can reveal to you. And so they ponied up, I think between four families, something like $67, which was just miraculous and beautiful. Again, we spent $4.5 million, and for the amount of money that I'm asking you to contribute for $13, and there's a reason I'm asking for $13, we'd have to have 357,000 people contribute $13 to match what we've already put into this to get this information before we get groundswelled and lost in the sea of madness that everybody's going to talk about corruption in different ways, and we're going to have a country that gets even further into disrepair given everything that's around you. Just look around at the homelessness, the heat waves, all of the situations that emanate from the problems that emanate from corruption. Corruption is the tumor. The only way we can fix this is to purge corruption. I've got a plan. I've got a network. I've got a pathway. I know exactly what to do. We've already spent so much time, effort, and money. It cannot be for nothing. Millions of people who've gotten destroyed, and the tens of thousands of people who have had divorces, and the collateral damage, and the homelessness, and the suicides, cannot all be for naught. This is financial terrorism, and it's actually the entire planet's underneath the thumb of this whole thing. There's only one way we're going to be able to defeat this madness before all of it destroys us, and that's if millions of us come together, unite. If you, me, and everyone you see who isn't a Nazi, that believes in dignity and decency, that understands the importance to the system of integrity, and above all, sustainability. If all of you come out, we will, and join arms, we will defeat the misery of tyranny. And the reason I'm asking for $13 is in reflection of the 13 original colonies that stood up and changed history against the English Empire by defeating the crown and everything that came with it, which was the largest military and navy in the world, and also the largest economy in the world, backed by the East India Trading Company. But ultimately, they fought and died and sacrificed for independence, for better or for worse, in order to form a more perfect union because they were flawed. And anybody who understands history understands how they're flawed. And it's been, 236 years of nonstop trying to battle to make the system a lot better, and patriots make the world a better place. And patriots don't get involved with corruption and diabolical deception, and most of all, fascism. That's not what we are as Americans. And so this isn't a presidential campaign per se, but the point is it's trying to become this sort of groundswell that's like a civil rights like movement, revolution, to bring all of the information forward that the Supreme Court has hidden, all of our media has hidden, our politicians have hidden, and of course the main, the people themselves can't wrap their heads around something that they don't know. And so that's why we made the con available for free, at great sacrifice, but for liberty and justice for all. Please consider investing $13 as soon as you can, and please spread the word. Failure is not an option. Rise, roar, revolt, onwards and upwards.